Hi, my name is Catherine, and I am the quiz queen. Looking forward to my conversation with Pearl.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza with Women's Successful Living, and you're listening to another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And I am so excited today because I have a very special guest, and we are going to have a lot of fun today. And so grab your pen and paper, but I'm going to introduce you today to Catharine O'Leary. She's known as the Quiz Queen, is an expert in client connection. With over 3 decades in market research and consumer insights, she specializes in attracting our ideal clients and boosting our revenue. Her approach uses insightful questions to foster strong client relationships and also to grow businesses. I want you to sit back and listen to her, as her mission is to harness the power of curiosity to connect with your ideal client. So if you are somebody who is a business owner, you work in a company where you have to take care of your clients, or you're thinking about starting your own business, this is where you're going to want to have your pen and paper and take some really great notes. Catharine, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Pearl. I'm so excited that we finally got together. It's been a little while. We've been trying to get on each other's calendars, so this is fun.
I know. Thank you so much for being patient. Life has been kind of crazy, as those that are listening can understand. But I always like to kind of I've introduced you, but I always like to kind of get an idea of what was life for you kind of growing up? Oftentimes as we're growing up, we have these dreams, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a house, the white picket fence, and I'm going to be a fire person, or I'm going to be a teacher, right? And then it's interesting how our life kind of moves. And sometimes the guests will say, for me, I wanted to be a teacher, but I never became a teacher. However, in my life today, in my coaching, I'm kind of teaching, right? So I would love to know what that story was like for you growing up, and how does it transpire to what you're doing today?
Oh, okay. Interesting question. I grew up in a small town in southern Ontario. Bigger family, I guess. I have 3 younger sisters, so there's 4 of us. My father was outnumbered and outgunned at every phase of everything. So poor man. He and I were really close. He was a corporate national sales manager for Hallmark cards for a long time, and then he went into business for himself. And we always connected on that, talking about the economy, or talking about what was going on in business, talking about what was going on in our town, and but always from that, almost like from a business focus. So I feel like I got trained to think about business and think about, like, he used to even take me to 5-star restaurants when I was a kid, like 12, 13, so that I knew how to behave in a business lunch or a business dinner, right? So, this is the fork you use. This is the way that you eat the sorbet between meals, to cleanse your palate. So, I feel like I've been in training for what I'm now doing for a long time.
I love that. You just painted such a great picture. And those are not watching, I mean, just think about that. You're sitting in your car, you're driving, and imagine your mom or dad is taking you to this restaurant and being like, okay, sometime in your life, you're going to need this, right? And as parents, we try to give our kids those tools, but how cool, he was like, this is what I'm doing. And first of all, I'm a big Hallmark fan. So I love that that's what your dad did. I'm like, oh, he just warmed my heart. I could just imagine what that was like. But also to think about, he wanted to pour into you and say, listen, we don't know where you're going to go in life, but it might lead you to this path of, business owner, or somewhere in your life, you're going to have a career that you might have to sit across the table with somebody who makes some decisions, right? Or you're the decision maker. And you want to present yourself like that professional way. I think that is so cool. And then, look what you're doing today. You're helping businesses to grow. You're helping us create these great customer experiences. And also, it's a win-win. It's a benefit for the clients, a benefit for us. So I love that. So that is such a great story. I love great stories, especially when it comes to our parents. I think that's really, really cool. So tell us, so you had that, and your poor dad outnumbered by 4 women. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, no, even the dog was a girl, and he's just like, oh, seriously, that was the name of his book. Even the dog, really,
I can sympathize with him. I'm a mom of 2 boys, a husband, a male dog, and a female dog that likes all the males. So it's like, I was outnumbered. I can totally appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about, you had this growing up, and now have you always been doing what you're doing today and helping businesses in the client connection? Or what led you to start doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of followed my training from very young age. I went into business, and I became my school, my education is actually as an economist. So I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in economics. And from there, I mean, most of microeconomics is all about consumer behavior and why consumers buy one thing or another thing. So that always fascinated me. I was lucky enough to kind of be mentored by one of my professors, and he actually had left the university and was in a business that was doing boutique market research. So very high level econometrics, statisticians were behind the scenes modeling this behavior, and we were the consultants in the front end, creating the questions, creating the surveys, like understanding what that information meant for our clients, which were corporate. So I've worked, for Pepsi, for Apple, for Adobe, BlackBerry, TD Bank, AT&T, kind of up one side and down the other, the Fortune 50, whether I was doing the market research as a supplier or, being on client and so working with the organization and hiring market research vendors. So I've always been in that curiosity mode where I like asking questions, understanding those answers, and then incorporating those answers or translating those answers to product development, innovations, services, offers, bundles, messaging, whatever was needed for the corporation. I was not 100% sure how to use that info or how to use those skills. After 30 years, I kind of got burnt out in corporate. Corporate for me meant 3 hours a day in the car commuting, and I was done with that. This is pre-COVID, and pre the days when everyone just worked from home, anyways. And I was just kind of done, and I wanted to do something different, but I didn't actually know how to port such corporate, quote unquote, air quotes, such corporate skills into my own business, because I knew I did not want to be a market research supplier. I did not want to do that. So I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like I was kind of faced like at 50 years old. I'm like, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? I don't know. Like now I'm asking myself that question again. I started in I knew that I did not want to be back in the car and commuting. So I started a home-based business. I started in network marketing. And that's a great business model, especially if you're starting up. It was in personal development. It was, great events, great courses, great people. What I soon found out was that I was terrible at lead generation. Like absolutely like epic F fail, like awful. And I was spending money hand over fist on paid advertising that didn't work. I was spending hours on discovery calls or get to know me calls that went nowhere, and just sucked the life out of you. And like I was posting to social media, and it would just go out there and just, I don't know, it's still going somewhere. I don't know where it's going, but it's off. It's gone. It never returned like into any kind of ROI. So I had to, I mean, and a lot of people get faced with this, right? So, like you're hiding under the covers and you don't want to take one more call and you don't want to talk to one more person and you don't want to have one more disappointment. So you have to make a choice. Like, like for me do I go back to corporate, which I could easily do? Or do I figure this out? Because this is figure outable. Like this can be, like, people do this. So I, took about 2 seconds to realize that there are not enough podcasts or audiobooks in the world to get me back in the car for 3 hours a day. So I was going to have to figure this out. Like it's time to put, the, the adult pants on and figure it out. And I got a mentor. And he was helping me through some of the business strategy. So it's one thing to be in corporate and one thing to be in business for like all my career. It's another thing to run a business. That's a totally different animal. And so he was helping me, get some of the foundational things that I didn't have in place. And he introduced me to quiz funnels. A friend of his was running a quiz funnels masterclass, and I took that class and I took the course, and then the lights started going off, and I was like, oh, that's how I can take all this corporate and knowledge and experience and create a business for myself. It still wasn't quite that big of a light bulb moment. It still took me a little while because I had to try it. So I tried it on my own business. I created a quiz and I was able to triple my leads and doubled my sales. I was like, okay, well, this is, pretty good. I'm liking this. And so I worked with a couple of colleagues and got similar results for them, and then realize that, yeah, this is not just a one-off thing. It's not just because it's network marketing. It's not just, because I'm Canadian or whatever. Like, this is actually working. And I can, continue doing this. And I always, for me at least, I'd always known that the network marketing thing was never the end game, right? It was never the place that I was going to land. So I moved on from that, and I created the business around Ideal Client Academy, and around asking questions and listening, and really building those deeper client relationships as you go forward from the moment that you hit kind of start.
So I wrote down, and I forewarned Catherine before we got on. I write lots of notes when I go, because for those of you that are driving, go back and watch and listen, but sit down and write notes. I do this all the time when I'm working and recording on podcasts or listening to podcasts, because there's nuggets that I can come back and read. And so a couple of things I want to kind of go through the nuggets that I heard you say was, I loved it too that you said, you had a choice, right? Like that I want to go back to that 1.5 hour car ride, because we talk a lot here on the show too about self-care. And that's a lot, like to be in a car for 3 hours a day. That's a lot. I mean, I know I used to live in LA. I lived in Northern Virginia, and traffic can be a bear. This is, like you said, for me before COVID, right? And so it's that, like you said, when you finally realize, I don't want to do this anymore, and what's my, the passion. But I wrote, because what's really cool is I work with a lot of women that are like that 40 plus, that are getting ready to hit that second, I call it the second season of their life, that they probably, maybe their kids are ready to hit high school, or they're, going to be an empty nester, and they're like me, like, what have I done all my life? Like I wore so many titles that I forgot what's my passion, right? And so I love that you went back and you looked and said, this is what I do in my, my day job, and I really like it, but how can I do something, and create that business around it? And I like what you said. It's, it's totally different running a business versus being, the person that shows up for the business, right? I love that you said that, because the whole thing, I think for me, what I wrapped my head around when you said that is, how are you creating harmony in your life, right? Like, how are you finding that, because people say balance. I'm sorry, but you can never have scales that are perfectly in balance. There's always going to be something in their lives that's going to take you off. However, if you can find things that bring you harmony, like, okay, let's say you don't want to start a business and you have that 3 hour car ride, right? What kind of things do you do for that car ride? Maybe you listen to a podcast, maybe you listen to a meditation, maybe there's something you can put on to help you during those rides to and from work, right? But having that finding that harmony is so important. But also, like you talked about, like finding, you talk about the lead gen, the network marketing, finding what works. I love, you said, I love network marketing. I've done that. I have a side business that I do that's all around my health and wellness products that I offer to my clients. It's a great tool. It's a great way to get to know people. It's a great way to share a product that you have that can lead to other things like what I do. But, it's really important. But I love that you said, you got a mentor. Right.
Yes.
And so it's so important, if you're listening to us and you're thinking about starting a business, or even if you are somebody who works for somebody else, even then it's okay to have a mentor, right? Because sometimes, in your 9 to 5 job, or your job, you're trying to find some harmony and you're like, I'm lost. So whether it's getting a coach like somebody like me, or you find somebody, if you're getting ready to start a business, that can help you create client marketing and start. I mean, like you got a mentor, but then having somebody like you, Catherine, I'm sitting here listening, going, "Ooh, I have to ask Catherine more about this quiz funnel thing because that's something that I you struck my heart, you guys. She struck my heart. We kind of were talking about it before we got on. Is I just told my biz coach, I'm like, I'm tired of get to know me calls. I'm tired of getting on the call with people. To me, they're time wasters. For my podcast, it's different because I pre-interview anybody that comes to my podcast. So that is an important get to know me call. But for my business, for my coaching business, so that I want to work with that person that's like, can I just talk to you about what you do? Because I think I want to work with you. I believe that's well, you might bring value to my life. Those are people I love to get on a call with. But we get so many and those who have social media, we get lots of DMs trying to sell us every product in the world, right? And so it's important to take your time, again, back to self-care. How are you spending your time? And if it's time wasters, find a way to get out of that. So tell us about the quiz, like the quiz things. Like, can you walk us through like some of some examples of what kind of questions, maybe how you have helped these businesses you've done to create this product or this model that can help them. I like to say, yeah, it's going to bring them clients, but how they can change the world with what they offer.
Well, yeah, because I mean, here's the hard truth, and startup entrepreneurs do this all the time, and I did it, and I'm sure you did it too, Pearl. But we tend to get really free with our time and give it away because it's the thing that we have that we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can give you this because I actually don't have any money right now, or I can't pay for this or whatever, and it's actually the absolute worst thing that you should be doing or can be doing because time is the only thing that you can never get back, right? 24 hours a day, everyone has it. Everyone has the same 24 hours. And if you look at the people that are really, highly successful, even when they were kind of starting out, they weren't giving their time away, right? Like Richard, like you're not getting on to Richard Brunson's like calendar, like you're just not. Like he's not doing discovery calls, like like that ain't happening. And I don't think he's ever done that, to be honest. Now somebody might know him and call me and say, yes, he did, but that's okay. Maybe he did, but probably did not for very long. What you want to do is, and this is where the business world this is where the economy, where our clients' expectations are going. They're a little cynical too, right? Like, I mean, we've all been on those like discovery calls, quote unquote, that turns into a sales call, that turns into a high pressure call that like no one wants to, like I just had a question or whatever. So let's use our time to talk to the people that are ready for us. That are ready to have the conversation of, you know what, I am missing this, and how, like, what are your services? What are your, how could we support each other? And how could we move forward? But before that, there has to come some know, like, and trust building and some, just getting to know you conversations. And I say conversations, but I don't mean literally like be on a call. I'm talking about like a quiz. I consider a two-way conversation because what you're doing is you are attracting the people in that I call it the 3 a.m. question, right? So if you think about your ideal client, what is that 3 a.m. question that they're waking up and stressing about and worried about? How do they talk about it in their own language? When they wake up, they say, what? Oh my God, I have to get more clients because I have to pay the mortgage, or oh my gosh, I have to, I just wish I could take the kids on that dream vacation. Whatever that is for your ideal clients, in reference to the problem that you solve, right? And then solutions that you have, what is that? Let's talk about that, right? Okay. That's your 3 a.m. question. I want to talk about that because I actually want to help you with that, right? Because that's what I do. Like, that's my solution. That's actually my business. Now, that being said, I don't have to go straight into, oh, you have this problem, I have a solution. Just give me your credit card and, $5,000 later and it'll be good. Like, that's proposing marriage on the first date. We haven't had enough of a conversation. You don't know enough about me. And to be honest, I don't know enough about you because we may not be the right fit for each other, and that's okay, right? I mean, you want to attract the best and release the rest. because there's somebody else's best. Like there's lots of business out there. There's lots of people out there that are looking for you, and you need to make room and make the way free and clear for them to find you. So you need everyone else to step out of the way, right? So that you can shine brightly for your ideal clients, talking to them about their 3 a.m. Question. And then there's probably, four, maybe six, call it 5 to 8, 5 to 8 questions that if you sat down with a really good friend who said, I'm having this question, right? This 3 a.m. question, this 3 a.m. problem that's waking me up at night. You're going to probably have a set of questions or, kind of intuitively that there are some base questions that you're going to ask somebody just to get a little bit more information to know where your advice is going to go. Those are the quiz questions, right? They tell a bit of a story, right? You're going to go from very general to more specific because you never ask your friend like right up front, well, can you afford $5,000 before we get started? Before we even have this conversation that we're having as friends, can you afford $5,000? Because otherwise we're not going to talk. Right. And I'm not saying that you don't have to have parameters up and ways to make sure that you're talking to the right people. I'm just saying that there's an order of let's talk about your business. Let's talk about what's happening in your business. Let's talk about what you've tried to fix it in your business. Let's talk about the solutions that you've tried. Why didn't they work? Why are you looking for something new? What exactly are you looking for? There's some general questions that you usually ask those in your quiz. And as your person or your clients are going through that, they're thinking to themselves, oh, yeah, what have I tried? Yeah, why didn't that work? Oh, I remember. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And then they go to the next question and you're getting them to think and you're getting them to kind of, every question is a micro commitment. Every question is like the next step towards you. And then what you can do at the end is say, oh, I get you. I hear you. I understand now that we've had this conversation. Here is, here are the challenges that you're telling me about. Here are some solutions. Right. And if they never go past that, you've given them value in that moment. Right. But the great thing is that give them that value in the moment and then invite them to more information and then invite them to the sales call because now they've kind of got through, they've kind of gotten to know you a little bit. You've gotten to know them a little bit. And they've gotten to the end and actually opted into okay, let's talk about this problem, the solution that I'm talking about. Then it's more of an offer conversation. It's not a sales conversation. It's like, let's continue the conversation. Right. And kind of move forward with that. So that's where I see the quiz or that conversation, that curiosity on both sides, on the client side and on your side. People that aren't interested in that conversation or interested in your solution are going to drop off the quiz. They're not going to, if they can't take 60 seconds to do your quiz, they're not going to take 6 weeks to do your course.
Right. Exactly. I love that's so true. I love that. It's funny to talk about the 3 a.m. client solution. And I agree. Like I often talk about, what's keeping you up at night? Like, what is it? Oh my God, I forgot to go and answer Mary Jane's call because she needs me to volunteer for this, right? That especially tied around people pleasing. We say yes to so many things, and then all of a sudden at the end of the night, you're like, oh my God, I forgot to call this person back. I forgot to send that email. I forgot to drop the cookies off. Or I didn't buy the cookies at the store. All those realms, and it's like that's why I say, what's keeping you up. Also, what's getting you so mad that somebody, if you're so busy that somebody's like, they ask you to make a grilled cheese sandwich, which is so simple and easy to do. Slap cheese between 2 pieces of bread with some butter on it. That's so easy. But if you're getting stressed out over that, it's like, we need to talk, right? Because that's such a simple task to do, right? I love that you talk about that 3M and finding the solutions. I think that's important. I think, like you said, too, when I started out, I gave my time so often. In fact, before I started what I'm doing now in my coaching business, I just concentrated in the health and wellness area. And so I had clients who was like, they were coming to me for their weight loss journey. And they're like, Pearl, you're such a great listener. You're such a great coach. Because the person I trained under, if you went to her, I could hear her in the other room. And maybe, of course, we're not supposed to have cakes and cookies and things like that, but we slip, right? We have a slip sometimes. And she'd be like, oh, you took yourself off 3 days. All this, like, you felt like you're in your mom's room getting, punished for, talking back or something, right? And my approach was, okay, let's talk about the emotion. Like, what about the cookie brought you the emotion? What was happening? Were you stressed out? Did somebody say something to hurt your feelings? And they would be like, I just love that approach. Can you talk to my friend? She doesn't need to lose weight, but you're such a great listener. You give good advice. And so I found myself, Catherine, doing let me have free tea with you. And I will have a cup of tea with you while you drink a cup of coffee and we'll talk about what's happening. And then I was like, that light bulb went off and go, stop doing that. Just like I said, the get to know me calls, like, that's my time. My time is valuable, right? So how can I bring into my world those people that are looking for a change, that are kind of thinking where they need to start, but they're not sure where they need to start, especially around self-care. Because if you are that people-pleasing addict like I was, all the thoughts about they're not going to like me, they think I'm selfish, and then I feel guilty for telling them no, all those thoughts, they're just our stuff. And we can say no as happy as we say yes. We just have to have the tools in the toolbox, and I love that,
and that's, and the quiz doesn't have emotion. Like,
right.
a quiz doesn't care. Like, answer A or B. I don't care. Like, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
So take the emotion out of it and make it a little bit, more of a fact finding, more of a, we're just getting to know each other, because there's lots of ways that we, like, in this age, that we get to know each other. Like, we go and looks at somebody's social, or we go and do a quiz or something like that, or go to their website and maybe go to a masterclass, or like, it doesn't need to be you on a call for 15 minutes. And the one thing that my coach said to me was, wouldn't you rather have an hour-long call with really qualified people that you get jazzed about, that are probably going to be clients and so on, than have like 15-minute calls and none of them go anywhere? Right? Like I would rather go deep with, if it's going to be on my calendar and my time, like, I want to be continuing a relationship at that point in time, not starting it.
Right. That's why I think before we hopped on, that's why I created this like mini coaching session, like a soulful self-care mini coaching session. So if you're listening to us, it's something we're launching, and it's just for those people who they see me all the time. They're like, I want some time. I'm going to give you time on my calendar, but understand, I'm going to give you so much good material in those 30 minutes we're together. In fact, you're going to do homework before you get on the 30-minute call with me. So therefore, if you're not going to do the homework, you're not going to get on my call, even though you've paid, until you're ready to invest that into yourself. So I'm like, if you pay the money and then you answer the quiz, like, I'm not going to, if you book the call, then there's deeper questions I want to ask you than just on the quiz. And then that way, when we get on the 30-minute call, we are going to dig deep in 30 minutes. You're going to walk away going, man, I want more. Right. And so I love that you share that. And, finding a way to tell a story, it's so important that we do those things, because, life is so busy. We have to take care of ourselves. And I kind of want to go back for a second too, if we can, Catherine. So when talking about self-care, you're working with these businesses and you're working with entrepreneurs and so forth. What are some of the things, give us top 3 things that you see entrepreneurs or business owners where they struggle finding time for self while they're running their business? What are some of the things that you see that you have to be, maybe you have the conversation with them and going, listen, you're spending too much time here. What are some of the things, the traits that you see in that world?
Well, we've already talked about one of them, which is giving your time away, right? And just way too much time for free to, hopefully maybe convince somebody that they want to talk to you to, like, make the sale for, $197. Like, don't stop doing that. Because it's just going to burn you out. There's a lot of burnout around giving time away. There's also, a lot of, you really have to understand your zone of genius, and because, like, if you take your day, probably you're spending about 20% on your, like, zone of genius. Like, get that to be 100% of your day and outsource everything else. And I know that's really hard. as you're first starting, and as you're kind of building up, and it's not possible for everyone immediately, and that's okay. But as soon as you can stop wearing all the hats, you're gonna have a better business. You're gonna actually start having a business as opposed to a job that you've now created for yourself that's 24/7 instead of 9 to 5. um and the third thing I think is just um stressing out over the next best tactic, right? The next best thing, the shiny object that's coming along, the one thing that you haven't tried because you haven't made it to six figures in the last 30 days, and everyone else is saying that they've done it and you haven't. And by the way, everyone else is lying. That's not the way it works. Like, there is no magic bullet. There's no silver bullet here. The best thing that you can do, is get a coach and a mentor, regardless of, I don't care if you're 7, 8, 10 figures, all those people have coaches of some sort or mentors of some sort. They're in masterminds. They go to networking groups. Like, like people, that's what they do to grow. Entrepreneurship is the largest embarkment on personal development that you'll ever do, because it's day in, it's day out. It is like 90% mindset. The tactics come and you have to learn those, yes, but once you kind of get your systems in place, then it's really a mindset game. So having that time to be able to step back and have I want to work on my 20%. I want to work on my zone of genius, and I'm going to spend 2 full days of my calendar. In my calendar, nobody can book me on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Like, it's not possible. You cannot book me, right? Unless I, override my own rule, because those are my days that I sit and I just work on client work or on the next creative idea or the next, I want to play with AI a little bit, and I want to, how can I help my clients with this? Those are the days that like, those are gold to me. The other days, I will take meetings, I will have calls, I will work on email, for a JV partnership or whatever. Those are my buffer days. That's fine. But those 2 focus days are just focus on what, what I'd like to be doing actually 24/7.
I had myself on mute. Oh my gosh. So I love that. So giving our time away is, some of the top 3 things we see that affects our self-care in business owners. Giving time away, which is so true. Like, we give too much time away. Even volunteering, like, people will ask, oh, you own a business. Can you do this? Can you do that? Because I think you own a business, you got all this time, right? And even family. I remember one time when I first started my business, somebody goes, well, you work for yourself. I was like, well, it's no different if I was working a 9 to 5. I still got to get my work done, right? Like, it's still important and I do my job, right? And then, having that zone of genius, I love that you remind us of that, because sometimes we're thinking, especially as a coach, like maybe you're a coach in health and wellness, and you think, oh, well, maybe I can go over here and coach on this. No, what's that thing that brings you passion? And what's that zone? Just stay in that lane, because if you think, which also ties into stressing over the next big thing, because that shiny object, and I call it the squirrel, and I've done it too. I see things and I have to remind myself, yep. I have to tell myself that's false evidence appearing real to me, right? And so that's not, even though it says fear, that's false evidence appearing real to me that these people are putting in front of me, and it's so, so important, because they are selling to the pain point, like we're talking about. They're selling to the pain point. People are trying to make money quickly, right? So great job for them. They're doing what they're supposed to do, right? And so it's so important. And, simple things, like I talked with somebody yesterday. I'm going to be on her summit on Saturday. And I love what she did. She's like, she has this group. She's like, Pearl, I manage everything in my group. And she has the group. Part of it's free. Part of it's like, okay, if you are active in my group and you want to do this role, it's $50 a month. And if you want to do this bigger role, it's $100 a month. And when I sat down and figured it out, I'm like, she's making almost $3,000 a month, because I verified her group and the numbers. I'm like, if I do the math, she's making $3,000 a month in her group just by letting people come into her group and talk about their business. I'm like, this is just so cool, right? I just love that whole idea. And so finding things like, I'm looking at that going, there's some time management that she has to manage that group and make sure people are doing what they're doing. But for the most part, it's actually even something like what you went back to and said, in your zone of genius, if doing admin work does not bring you the money you need to bring in, you need to hire somebody. Having that
Yeah.
VA or that, I just hired my friend's daughter. She's coming out of, she's in college, coming home for the summer. I'm having her do some things for me, which is part of it's managing this podcast show for me because it takes a lot of time. But I'm like, I'm going to hand it to her because it's something she's learning. Here, I can teach her and then not have so much time, taken up of my own. But that zone of genius it's so important. And then also like the flip side of that, like having a coach or mentor. It's so I wish I'd done that from the beginning. I totally wish from the get-go I'd done that. So if you are listening and you are thinking about doing a business or you've just started or you're, in your business, stop and get a coach and mentor. Let them look at what you're doing. Let them do an audit of what you're doing and help you start looking at where you can maybe delegate, where you can change some things up and really come back into that zone of genius so you don't feel overwhelmed. I love that. And then when you talk about the time wasters, like that 20% of time, like, oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah.
Now, I love when you talk about your focus time. You take 2 days. I was sitting here as you were saying in my head going, oh, I do a half a day on Monday and Tuesday. How can I flip that to 2 days? Because it's so powerful, right? And in fact, today, this morning during my focus time, I looked at my calendar for the rest of the year and I looked at because I record podcasts sometimes 2-3 times a week, but I release once a week, right? So what I did today, Catherine, is I looked at my calendar and I said, I have these couple things that are coming up that I need to focus on, like really promoting and filling. So where can I like cut back on? And when I went to my podcast, I'm like, oh, I can cut back on how many podcast recordings I'm doing every week because now I'm full to the end of the year, right? So that's a great problem to have, right? So now I can be like, okay, I'll still record one a week, but I don't have to record 2 or 3 because now I've done what I want to do for the rest of the year, right? So I love that you remind us of that. Like, but having the at least 2 days if you can, if not at least a half a day for a couple of times of the week to have that focus time is really, really important.
And one of the things that I'm going to encourage you and others, like you had a half a day one day and a half a day the other, that those are like it's 8 hours, but it's not 8 solid hours. Like if you put that all into one day, like the same 8 hours in a week, but if you stack them in one day and don't split your time to, oh, I have to talk to so and so, or I have this other thing that I'm doing this afternoon, or you know what, I'm going to get to my focus time later this afternoon. We're going to do all this, and this, and then life happens, and then everything happens, and then you don't get to your focus time. Like if you actually stack the same 8 hours, you'll probably get 16 hours worth of work done.
Yeah, it's so true. Because I was sitting here going, like you even said, I wrote down 100% of the time, unless you overbook yourself, unless you change that, right? And I'm like, I went back, like I was thinking in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I've allowed people to come in here. I've made exceptions here. I'm like, no, I can no longer allow exceptions. Like this is a great coaching call for me too today, guys. This is a great reminder stuff that we're doing here. It's so much fun. And I know time is flying, but this has been great information. So if you could give, like somebody's listening to you, right, Catherine, they're going, oh, a quiz. I love that you gave some examples of quizzes. Are there any popular quizzes that you see for people starting out that people should consider doing, like that 1 or 2 popular quiz that kind of can help them start learning about quizzes? Is there any area that you think somebody should concentrate on?
What type of quiz?
Yeah, like what's the most proper type of quiz you're seeing in the industry, what you're doing?
People love personality types, right? Like what superpower do you have? What is your media type? What is your what's your 6-figure persona, or what's your CEO persona? Like where you can kind of build an avatar almost around like this. I call them segments at the end of the quiz. If for everyone out there who's Harry Potter fans, if you think about Harry Potter, if you think about J.K. Rowling, this is your J.K. Rowling moment, right? You get to create Hogwarts, which is where all your ideal clients are hanging out. Everyone's a witch or a wizard in Hogwarts, right? But they don't go all into the same house. right? They go into the different houses or segments, depending on the sorting hat, right? Depending on their characteristics, depending on what they need, their personalities, and so on. And they're named Gryffindor and Slytherin. Like these weren't real words before J.K. Rowling. Um, you get to do that. You get to create your own set of houses and what they're named and what characteristics people have in them and how they're different from each other. And then you get to play with that. And that becomes part of, if you want, it becomes part of your branding. It becomes part of the way that you talk about it. Maybe you're a red dragon versus a green dragon. Or maybe your microphone is sparkly with diamonds because you're always on stage versus, a podcast microphone because you're always, kind of behind the scenes, or a karaoke microphone because, you'd rather be singing. I'm making stuff up now, but you get to do that. You get to make it up. And if you're quirky and your personality can shine through that way, and it can be a lot of fun.
Those are great, quick examples. I love that. I was like, oh, I love and I was sitting here going, wow, I could create my own story. That's like really, I mean, I kind of already knew that, but so if you're listening, think about what kind of story could you create if you could take your pen out and go, I want characters that are like this, right? That's kind of what you're doing with everybody. So I love that. So Catharine, tell everybody how they can find you, where they can learn more about you.
Yeah. So the best way to find me is at quizformybiz.com. And it's a quiz. it's a way for you to actually take the quiz to find out how quizzes can help you with closing any communication gaps that you might have in your client attraction system. So if you're finding that you're not finding the leads that you want, the number that you want, or the quality that you want, there's probably one of 4 reasons for that, being that you're not being very clear on your 3 a.m. question. You might not be building up the authority that you need. You might not be taking people through the journey and the stepping stones from the problem to the solution, or you may not be following up enough. And depending on how you go through that quiz, we help you identify what type you are and give you some solutions to that. So definitely check out quizformybiz.com. And from there, you'll be taken to, an invitation to a masterclass or maybe a call with me. It depends on kind of my marketing schedule.
So I wrote that down, quizformybiz.com. We're going to put that on the show notes. If you're driving, you can't take notes, you'll be able to come back and watch and listen and read all about the show notes. I think this has been so much fun. I took so many fun notes. I can't wait to go back and read them. And I'm probably going to reach out to you too about Quiz for My Biz because I have a couple, but I think they could be better. So I'm going to have you take a peek at them with me and do that as well. And so I just want to thank you so much for being on. And so we're not going to let Catharine go without the cards, you guys. So if you think I forgot, I did not. Yes. So we're going to shuffle the cards and Catharine's going to tell me when to stop. And then we're going to talk about the cards. So you tell me when to stop, Catharine.
Okay, stop.
All right, she told me to stop. Oh, your card says, how active and creative am I? How active and creative are you?
I could be more active if you're talking physically. Let's be fair. I work from home, so yeah. And it's coming into spring, so I'm excited about that. You know what? Creativity is a funny one for me because I'm an economist. I'm very analytical. I'm very data driven. But I do have this, then I talk about the J.K. Rowling moment and I help people find their J.K. Rowling moments. So I'm a kind of a little bit of a dichotomy in that sense, but I kind of love the storytelling and the ability when people light up and say, oh my God, my whole business can I can talk about my business like this. Because business doesn't always have to be so dry.
Yeah.
And so buttoned down and so Wall Street or Bay Street or depending on what country you're in.
I love it. It's so true. This has been fun. You guys, I always talk about how are you telling your story, how you're creating your story. So I think what we might end up telling is finding your J.K. Rowling moment, right? So it's so much fun. And if you're listening, you heard me talk about the coaching session and everything. If you want to learn more about that, all you have to do is email hello@wsliving.com. That's hello@wsliving.com. And just put in the notes soulful, and I'll know you want some information on getting that 30-minute coaching session with me. because you deserve it. You deserve to figure out how you can be more soulful in your self-care as well. And I just want to remind everybody who's listening and or watching that you need to like and subscribe to us, but also remember that you are this amazing oyster. On the outside, it's a little rough, but as you go inside and you open it up, you will find your own personal pearl as well. So go out today, become that Shiro as you find your inner pearl to greatness.